Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for being here today. I've got a good friend, Rick McCracken, who is the host of the new show, Cardano Live, which we're going to talk about in just a second. But for those of you who may not know Rick, he's been involved in the Cardano space for a long time and a great guy. So, Rick, thanks for being here, man.
Thank you, Hashoshi, for having me on your program. I very much appreciate it. And I appreciate you letting me do the inaugural launch of Cardano Live here on your show. That's much appreciated as well.
For sure.
With Cardano Live, what I'm going to be doing is live stream podcasts. They'll be mostly live. We'll also do some pre-recorded depending on the guests because of the time of day. A lot of the guests may be in the far side, eastern side of Europe or in Asia or Australia. And therefore, I'll have to kind of adjust the time and do pre-recorded release. But we're going to focus on getting largely live podcasts out. We'll get them out frequently, and we'll try to get some of the breaking information from the experts in the space. I will have on experts from IOG, Emergo, the Cardano Foundation, anyone who's willing to come on. I would also like to have people from other cryptocurrency platforms who would like to either connect with Cardano or collaborate with Cardano related technology and developers, and they can come on the program to showcase their work or give people a nice simple description of what it is they're doing, and that way it'll help people come together and bring the whole crypto space connected a little better. Because you've probably seen me on Twitter. I can play a little rough with the Ethereum folks, but it's all good. It's all good. You know how it is. You can play rough, and at the end of the day, you can still shake hands and, hey, come on over to my podcast if you'd like. And
Yeah.
thanks for having me on.
Right on, man. I love it. And I think we've got a pretty solid set of things to talk about today. In the Cardano space, we're going to talk about decentralization. We're going to talk about smart contracts. The future of Cardano. So we've got a lot of good stuff there. But before we dive into that, folks, make sure you go head over to Cardano Live. I'm going to leave a link in the description below. Get subscribed so you're ready for the first episode, which might or might not be a secret, but it's going to be a good one. So make sure you're headed over there.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. Current plan is I'll launch it April 2nd, Friday, April 2nd, 12 noon Eastern time, 1600 UTC or 4 p.m. UTC time will be the first one. And then we will continue rapid and continuous after that.
Perfect. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into the topics of the day. I think the first place that I wanted to talk about really, Rick, is if we're looking at March 31st. March 31st is a fairly important date for the Cardano ecosystem. That is when we hit that D equals 0 date. Can you explain to folks that are watching what that means and why it's exciting?
All right, yeah, so what that means, when the Cardano mainnet launched, one of the parameters that determines the number of community independent pool nodes that create blocks and the number of IOG controlled BFT nodes, the Byzantine fault tolerant nodes, how many make the blocks. So when the mainnet launched back in July 29th of 2020, the D parameter was set to 100 and all BFT nodes made all blocks. And so over the past several months, the D parameter, every 5 days, it would count down by 2% until it reaches D equals 0 in next week on March 31st. So what happened during that time frame is more community stake pool operated nodes made the blocks as the D parameter counted down. So at this point, there are 98% of the blocks are made by community pool operators, making it a very extremely decentralized ecosystem. And I got to tell you, the community pool operators are doing a fantastic job because there you can look at the stats over on Pool Tool and it shows the block production rate and the percentages, and they're doing extremely well in making the blocks when they're supposed to be made. So well done to the pool operators out there.
Right on. Yeah. And I guess this is for someone that's watching that might not be familiar with Cardano, or maybe is just coming into the crypto space, there's this natural progression for a protocol as it starts to break away from its parent open source community or the developers that are making it. In this case, that's what's happening here. The responsibilities of consensus and governing the network and minting blocks over time is being, has been slowly, but is now being fully transitioned over to the community, which is unaffiliated with IOHK, IOG, et cetera, the main folks behind the Cardano open source project. And so, one thing I always like to to dispel, and this is something I hear a lot, is this deep parameter reaching zero means the network is 100% decentralized, which I think, while that is meant well, it's a little misleading, because I think it makes the focus like, oh, the network is, there are no centralized points in this network.
Yeah.
No
So
network has that.
yeah, so let's touch on a few of those. All right, what are
Sure.
those centralized points? So what happens after March 31st? D equals 0. That means 100% of the blocks are created by the community pool nodes, including the nodes operated by Binance, IOG, and all the community pool operators as well that are out there. So 100% of the blocks, but there's still some points of centralization
Mm-hmm.
because the P2P, the peer-to-peer protocol, has to be deployed, and the estimated time for that is the latter half of 2021. We're looking at estimates. These are unofficial, but you're looking at maybe August, September, October timeframe until that deploys. And what that will do is, it's called peer discovery, where someone can bring up a node. It has a basic understanding of where some nodes are located on the network when it bootstraps, and it can reach out, and then it can learn from other nodes, other servers, where the remaining nodes and servers are located, and then it can build its own network topology. Currently, the network topology, and for the next several months, the network topology is built manually by the pool operators, and there are locations between GitHub and Topology Updater, and just manually figuring it out with other people. You can connect. So it's a manually constructed network. It's still extremely effective. It works extremely well, extremely efficient. But that is a point of centralization that needs to be sorted. And of course, there's still the governance with Voltaire,
Mm-hmm.
right? So currently, all decisions are made by IOG with community inputs. They do surveys. They hold stake pool operator groups. They talk to people. They have focus groups. They listen. They take inputs. They have idea scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they do get people's inputs to make the decisions. And they also know, IOG also knows that they have to build Voltaire so that the community can make the decisions, and that the blockchain executes those desires, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's natural that, people that get into this space, they get into it mostly because of, first of all, obviously there's financial opportunity, which everyone wants. There is the promise of decentralized technology, which I think is the shared common goal. Whether you're an Ethereum fan, you're a Cardano fan, you're an Elrond fan, everyone really wants the same thing. And I think that ultimately, some of the discussion about, like, oh, it's which is 100% decentralized, or what is the 100x tomorrow, those things distract from the ultimate goal, is let's get decentralized tech into people's hands. So I think that that's why I always bring up the idea of, like, okay, there are always going to be points of centralization in every protocol. That's human nature. That's the way systems are built by humans. And so we shouldn't worry too much about the little pockets that aren't perfect, right? Every protocol serves a place.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, one of the big transition points now that we're going through is people are looking for smart contracts on Cardano. It's a constant debate. People have been, anxiously awaiting the ability to write custom smart contracts on Cardano. And Rick, we have an update now on the timeline. So let's pivot our discussion in that direction.
Yeah, we do. So now we have a really good idea of when the last part of Goguen will be launched. Do you want me to do the screen share in just a moment?
Let's do it. Yeah, I think we have
Okay.
an actual screenshot of the launch timeline for
Yeah,
the
we do.
Alonzo fork. Yeah.
Yeah, we do. And so the three key parts people need to remember is Goguen launches in three phases.
Hmm.
The first two phases were on time and worked out well. The first phase was the metadata that was launched by the end of November 2020. So on-chain metadata that worked. So they rolled on to the next phase, which was deploying the Mary.
Mary.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
was deploying Mary. Thank you. Okay, and that's good to go. And the last part is deploying Alonzo, which leads us to full Goguen. Let me get the screenshot up. All right, so this was a timeline that was shared on Cardano 360. Across the top, you have March, April, May, June. It goes out to June, although the estimated launch to mainnet is in July. This is the testnet side. So
Hmm.
if we go down here to, I'm going to go down to the bottom where we have private testnet. I don't know if you can see my cursor,
Yes,
but at the
sir.
bottom, can you see that okay?
Hmm.
Okay. So it says private testnet launches in April. So early April, we're talking only about 2 weeks away uh, at the most from the time of this video is private testnet will launch. Now those are going to be select and specific people who know what they're doing so they can get real-time quick feedback from the developers, from the testnet operators, so the developers can find any bugs. Now what might happen, Hashoshi, you're a developer, you've been working on stuff like this for a long time. What could possibly go wrong during that private testnet phase? Think about it.
Yeah, lots of things. Little normal bugs. You could talk about, syncing issues. You could talk about, general just performance issues that you need to optimize to make sure things are ready to be tested adequately in a public test net. There are lots of things that can go wrong in a private test net and a public test net, and that's the reason why you run them. you know?
Yeah, that's the whole point of a test net. So the current estimated or projected date is you're looking at near the end of April, beginning of May, private test net will be done. Now, I don't think it will necessarily be complete by then. Personally, I'm just going to add a few weeks, which is a good thing. I'm going to add a few weeks to my own estimate and say private test net might go out until mid-May. That's okay.
Hmm.
Perfect. That's perfectly fine. Because I think there'll be optimizations like Hashoshi had mentioned that they will find in the private test net, possibly some bugs that have to be fixed before going on to the Pioneer test net. Okay, then by the beginning of May, up to the mid-May timeframe, we'll get onto the Pioneer test net where you bring in more people of various skill sets, and you would still not on mainnet.
Hmm.
Okay, now what kind of things could go wrong during this test net when we start bringing in various peoples of various backgrounds? What's your experience, Hashoshi, in doing stuff like this?
Well, that's when you see the classic example of people using software in a way that you did not anticipate, right? So this is going to be all the projects that, folks like Liquid Finance, folks like Cardano Kids, all the folks that have been building these startups, maybe running through the Catalyst Fund or whatever to build the dApps of the future on Cardano. They're going to start testing out what they're building on this test net. So they're going to be able to get some real world data about non-IOHK, non-IOG, non-insider developers building things that they want to build as dApps. And you'll find probably new bugs, you'll find new performance optimizations. You also maybe find out new economic levers as well, because smart contracts and execution in a decentralized network are also economic in nature. So there might be opportunities to figure out, fee pricing and other things that are different than the calculations internally.
Yeah, things that the participants, the pioneers, might find that they might want to tweak prior to mainnet that
Yeah.
may or may not impact the release on mainnet. But I'm thinking, the biggest impact will be once you start building this network out to scale on the Pioneer testnet, you might find scaling things that need to be addressed, optimizations again, like we had
Mhm.
discussed before. And that takes us up to the end of June, beginning of July, where with a possible mainnet launch of full Goguen, the third stage, where you get smart contracts, it brings Marlowe and Plutus to the table, possibly end of June, early July. I'm going to push my estimate out to August, which is fair enough. It's okay to do that. I'm going to push it out to early August to make up for when people find these things and say, hey, what about this? Do we want to solve this before this goes to mainnet, okay, which is a good thing. That's what it's designed. You get hundreds of people thinking on it, you get thousands of people thinking on it, and then the feedback just kind of works out well, and then you make sure you have a nice solid mainnet go out, which is it worked great so far for Cardano. So
Yeah.
there you
Yeah.
go.
I mean, there's this common anecdote that you hear a fair bit, and that is done is better than perfect, right? And it's often you hear it on YouTube, you hear it all over the place, which is like, get things done, put it out in the world, don't get stuck in perfectionism. I would say that that does not apply to building decentralized networks. That is proof positive in Ethereum 2.0. They had done a ton of work to build out Ethereum 2.0 and proof of stake 3 years ago. They scrapped the plans and restarted. Why? Because done is not better than perfect in the case of a decentralized network where you have one shot to deploy it properly because everything's built on trust. And so to me, while it's frustrating, right, to have to continue to wait for features that people might think are basic in nature, they are not basic to build. And ultimately, these things have to be as close to perfect as possible, because otherwise you have serious problems, in terms of eroded trust in the network, eroded trust in the team behind the network, and that's not good for anyone. And so that's why I think it's not worth sweating delays or perceived delays or perceived timelines. Hoping for the best possible outcome is the best move.
Yeah, and that sounds like you're speaking from the voice of experience. I've done some work in development and systems engineering, up in
Mm-hmm.
Northern Virginia, and you do find that once you get into the meat of solving the problem, you get through 90% of the work pretty
Yeah.
quick, right?
Yeah.
It's that last 10% that just takes forever to get it right. And
Yeah.
in non-critical or semi-critical systems, you can tolerate a little bit of room for error. But in critical systems where you deploy that smart contract, it's out there. It's in
Yeah.
the wild, not coming back. It's got
Totally.
to be right.
Yeah. And protocol level things, it is not something that you can release to mainnet, because even though smart contracts aren't out there yet, there are people who still use the Cardano mainnet as a large point of their subsistence, right? Stake pool operators, a lot of those folks are full-time stake pool operators, right?
Not
So
to
if
go
the
off on
net
a tangent, but I am now.
Yeah, exactly. Rick is a
Yay!
full-time stake pool operator. And just to let you guys know, the hash stake pool is coming. It's coming. Um, but long story short, there are people that rely on this mainnet the same as they do for others, other networks out there. And so to release an update before it's ready because folks want it now, or to satisfy people who are concerned about timeline, puts everything at risk, everything that's been worked on to date. And that IOHK and all the folks in that side of things will not do that. And that's why it takes a long time.
Yeah, it's got to be done right. And I love the way IOG's doing it, and I love the Cardano approach. And I'll give you an example. Like we launched SpaceCoins, right? SpaceCoins. We got that.
Yeah.
We got that out on Kyle Solomon. Shout out to Kyle for that. Put the SpaceCoins out, and we're using them for training and practice. Just pass them around, sharing, throwing them out to people for free, so that they get practice using native assets on the Cardano network, because it took me a lot of practice working with ERC20 and ERC223 tokens on the Ethereum network to really get it down right, check my gas fees, and kind of optimize that, right? And I realized, Cardano is kind of a little bit easier to use, just a little bit easier. And it would be great for people to have practice, because based everything you just said applies. Once you start putting really high value assets, like for example, Liquid Protocol could become a very valuable asset.
Mm-hmm.
It has to work. It's got to work
Yeah.
right. It needs to be fast and efficient, for example. And you could literally have countries launch their a currency or some sort of high value asset on the Cardano network, just like on the Ethereum network. There's extremely high value assets running on that network
Yeah.
worth hundreds of millions of dollars, on the market cap. So yeah,
Totally.
so I don't mind if there's a little pause before it all goes out. No problem. I would rather be patient and see it done right. How did you call it? There's done and then there's perfect. What's the best way
Yeah,
to say it?
no, it's like in this case, done is not better than perfect, right?
There you go.
You know, and I know not, you know, nothing is perfect fundamentally, we get this, but ultimately you got to avoid the mistakes. And in instances like this where you get one shot at getting it right, it's got to be deliberated over for a longer period of time. And you know, that's how it is. Look at Polkadot, right? Polkadot's taken a long time to launch. Why? Because Polkadot is doing some insanely innovative and powerful things. And the vision is very, very robust and very, you know, forward thinking. That's why it takes so long to build. That's why it takes so long to optimize things ferociously, because it needs to work the way that was envisioned. And you know, I think Cardano is in the same boat. And ETH 2.0, same thing. People are irritated with how long it's taking. It's funny, you know, it's like there's so much infighting amongst all these communities, but ultimately they're all in very similar positions because they're all building what they believe is going to contribute to the future goal, which we all share, and that is decentralized tech being mainstream. And that's why I hope we can fit, literally and figuratively, build bridges between these communities as much as we can.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And you know, I was watching a gentleman on a podcast a few days ago, and he said it very well. He said, "We it's like we've walked up to the big. We're about to run a marathon, and right
Mm-hmm.
now these different currencies, Cardano, Ethereum, Polkadot, we're walking up to the start line. We're not running the marathon yet. We're
Yeah.
still walking up to this, so you can't compare them. Like you know, Ethereum's doing it one way, they're building in one manner. Even though I poke fun at Ethereum people, it's all in good fun. It's
Mm-hmm.
just rough play. That's all it is, right? And they're building it a certain way. They have their methods, right? And then Cardano has their methods, and Polkadot has their methods, and so on. Um, some of them are good practices. Some of them are just different. Some of them are more innovative than others. Some of them are formal methods, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, we'll see. I think a lot of them are going to do quite well, and
Yeah, I
we'll
agree.
see how it goes.
Yeah, you know, people hear me all the time campaigning. Crypto is not a zero sum game, right? One protocol's win is not another protocol's loss. And ultimately, I think that we, as members of the general, well, you know, overarching crypto community, you know, have a huge part to play in the success of the networks that we like to use, even if we're not part of the core development team. And that's what makes this space so unique and so powerful. So I feel quite lucky to be where I am and where we are.
Yeah, and I think the competition and the critical nature between the cryptocurrencies is actually going to make them better.
Hmm.
Is it painful sometimes? Yes. Do we play a little too rough sometimes? Absolutely. Is it going to pay off in the long run? Sure, it will. That's
I
just how it
agree.
works.
And I think that is as good a sentiment as any to close out on. But what I wanted to do right before we sign off is give you, Rick, a chance to let people know where they can find you on Twitter, like what your handle is, and then broadly where best to connect with you.
Okay, well you can find me on Twitter with the at Rick McCracken Twitter handle, and I will also give you the links for the Cardano Live because I'm going to be transitioning. You know, I have two channels on my original channel. I'm going to keep that how to use a Ledger Nano, how to use a Trezor,
Hmm.
you know, basic how tos for beginners. But the podcast on Cardano Live, the Twitter account is at Cardano Live. The Facebook account is Cardano.live.
Hmm.
The Instagram account is Cardano Live. It has the logo just like how you see over here behind me. And the Twitch account is Cardano Live. And so I'm
Perfect.
going to stream also to Twitch, although it's kind of an experiment, right?
Yeah.
Some people would prefer Twitch over YouTube, and maybe it'll reach out to Twitch fans who like video games, who don't really want to leave Twitch to go watch something on YouTube, but
Hmm.
maybe it'll roll on into their feed and they'll be like, hey, you know what, this is kind of neat, and then they'll check it out over there on Twitch. And I'm also going to use the Instagram Live. I'm learning Instagram. My daughter's teaching me Instagram,
There you
so
go.
I got my yeah. And so I listen to young people all the time, man. I learn a lot from young people. And there's a Instagram Live. There's a upload feed on there, so I'm gonna put up there that way because there's not a big crypto community on Instagram.
Not, yeah, there isn't.
Or at least, I mean, there's a hashtag. I just tested the hashtags. There was like, I don't know, 10.7 million hashtags to cryptocurrency. But then I figured, you know what? Let's not leave them out. Let's go ahead and upload over there. And you know where I learned that from? I learned that from David at IOG. He did a video. He did a real quick little video that
Nice.
explained that.
Yeah, man. It was
Reach out on
spreading the
social
word across
So,
platforms.
yeah, sorry for that long outro that I gave you there,
No,
but
it's
that's
all
how you
good.
can reach me is so at Rick McCracken on Twitter, and then the Cardano Live is the ones because I think the podcast I'm going to try to make it huge, and we'll see how it
do it, man.
goes. And you're welcome to come over anytime. We can do Cardano Live together.
I would love to, man. Let's do that for sure. So, folks, make sure you give Rick a follow on all those platforms as that we just mentioned. And of course, thank you so much for all the time that you spend watching the content. Really appreciate it. Have a great week and weekend ahead. And until next time, cheers.